So we've kind of come to this point now where we've identified what EMF is. We've identified that blocking or trying to completely block EMF may not be the most effective or even the best thing for us. So that brings us to kind of where Blushield comes in and where Scalar technology comes in. And I know you've kind of gone ahead and utilized the words longitudinal components or scalar components and transverse waves. So maybe let's just see if we can break down in like its most simple components, even though I know that that's quite a task and not easy to do. What is scalar technology? Like if you had to summarize it in a very simple way, how would you give your elevator pitch on scalars?
Ooh, yeah, there's really no elevator pitch, and it becomes a little bit tricky in the sense because there's so many words that often refer to scalar energy in different ways. So, you have 0 point energy is the classic standing waves or Tesla waves, which are kind of more the classical scientific way to say it. You also have tachyon, you have orgone, you have radiant energy. All of these things refer to the same energy. So essentially, at its core, if you neutralize all electromagnetic frequencies, like let's say you had a way to make them disappear, you wouldn't hit a net zero. So there's not energy in the universe. So even if you take all of what we know away, there's still like a standing field or a gravitational wave or graphitic wave. So essentially what scalar technology does, and most of them are still kind of like old school and are compared to what we've done with Blushield using crystal photonics. They use radio frequencies. You can use any type of magnetic field, radio frequency. There's different ways to create scalar, but what you're doing is you're creating a neutralized field. And a lot of companies are still doing, phasing these 45 to 90 degrees to 180 degrees out of phase with each other. And what you're creating is a neutralized field that creates a field that, if you can visualize this in your mind's eye, it's like a circle, or a sphere, I should say. In this, you imagine a sphere, and now that sphere expands in all directions or omnidirectionally, and then collapses back in on itself. That's what's happening with these different ways of using, high voltage or low voltage, or however people are doing it these days, to create a scalar wave. So that scalar in and of itself isn't good or bad. I mean, we show clear evidence that it, increases the zeta potential and the vitality of the cell. Blood looks way better in the presence of it. But in Blushield, we use it as a carrier signal, because what's really great is that these longitudinal scalar waves don't lose power over time space. So if you have a transverse Hertzian frequency, like with a cell phone, right? The reason we have to have repeaters is that it loses power over distance. So distance really with modern technology is your friend. The further away from it you are, the less power it has and influence on cellular coherence it has. But what's nice about Blushield is you can put this in the center of your house and it'll go through walls, concrete, wood, anything, metal in your house. And it doesn't matter if you're 2 feet away from it or 20 feet away from it. It's going to have the same intensity because it doesn't lose power over time space. It's moving through the subatomic structures between atoms, right? So it's going straight through like the physical matter with the same level of intensity and the same there's no distortion in the information on that longitudinal wave. That's not really a simple way of saying this, but basically it's 4D. So we have 3D dimensional space, which is measurable on the electromagnetic spectrum, and then the longitudinal component, which does not usually exist in 3D space. And we can't create it, by the way. That's another misnomer about scalars. Like, we're not actually creating scalar out of anything. We're basically amplifying this naturally occurring scalar that exists in all things, and we're amplifying it, essentially. So that scalar or longitudinal wave moves along the axis of time itself in the fourth dimension, which sounds completely weird and mysterious and like pretty woo-woo without like really having a deeper understanding of quantum mechanics, essentially. But it's simply like compressed energy to the factor of the speed of light squared. I mean, if you want to like mathematical.
That's easy enough, right? No, I think it's interesting. I think that, a lot of my listeners too are probably going to want to know, okay, so like, let's say I go out and I buy a Blushield device, whether it's a cube or I buy, one of the portable devices or the one that goes in the car. All of these can be found on your website that I'm going to link on to. So is it now like amplifying the scalar signal so that the body is listening to the scalar waves and not listening to all the EMF around us? Is that a very oversimplistic way of looking at this?
No, actually, simplicity there is pretty appropriate. It's no different than tuning the dial on your AM or FM radio. So we're resonant beings. So the body is most influenced by the strongest signal in the environment. So at the cell level, what's happening is that if you can imagine all of these cells having antennas or being tuning forks, when you dial your radio on like an FM station, you're basically twisting a coil essentially. And what's happening is it's picking up different bandwidths of carrier signals. And when you dial it into a resonant frequency, you'll get a clear transmission of one of the carrier signals that has your favorite song on it, right? So it doesn't mean that the other stations aren't bouncing around the airwaves. They're certainly there, but you're making a coherent audio sound that you can follow with your song by tuning the dial into that. So what Blushield is essentially doing is it's transmitting signals that are strong enough to compete with the EMF in the environment. And over a 10 to 14 day acclimation period, your body starts to sympathetically resonate with it. See, Blushield is not on all the time. It pulses a 3-second pulse every half minute. And the longer you're exposed to that, especially the home units, which your body does the main entrainment with, your body starts seeking out those signals in the environment. And what happens is that the body stops perceiving the EMF as a threat. So it stops mounting an immune response, and it reallocates the immune power back to the body to regulate and just balance itself. Your body knows how to heal itself. It's just, obviously you know probably better than anybody. It's like the lack of movement, lack of proper nutrition, hydration, all these other things that really stand in our way. And then people just don't get that there's an electromagnetic component to that they might be doing everything else right. But then if they're not protecting themselves at the cell level from EMF, that could be hindering a lot of the results they could be getting potentially.
Right. Good point. And thanks for listening to the Hanu Health Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. This podcast would not happen without listeners and supporters like you. And the best way to support us and the show is to head on over to iTunes and provide us with a 5-star review. This helps us reach others and spread the good word of breathing and stress resiliency. If we read your 5-star review on air, please reach out to podcast@hanuhealth.com with your name and mailing address, and we will send you some sweet Hanu gear. Until next time, breathe better and stress less.